Freethoughtht Forum. Freethoughtht Forum comes to you from Knoxville, Tennessee, and today is Tuesday, May 5th, May Day, 2015.
2015.
And Freethoughtht Forum is a program produced by the Rationalists of East Tennessee and the Atheist Society of Knoxville, and paid for by them and other donations.
Yeah, thank you, Jonas. And I'm Joe Barnhart. We want to welcome you. If you do or don't believe in a deity, we want you to respond to us and interact with us, because we want to talk about what we think is something important, and we don't have to agree with each other, but just be agreeable, and that's good enough. And this is a program that's sponsored by people who have a view called naturalism, that is a view without supernaturalism. And so we'll welcome you to interact with us.
Yeah. And I'm Jonas Holdeman.
Okay, Jonas. And the topic is evolution of monotheism. And what do you think that means?
Oh, well, I somehow or other, I don't think it's kind of the end point in the evolution of religious thought.
Yeah.
It seems, as we were talking earlier, and we'll get to later, it seems almost as if some versions of monotheism smack of a lot of polytheism.
Yeah, in fact, monotheism developed apparently out of polytheism. And, well, we'll get into this in some detail. What we're trying to say is that even the notion of a God had to go through processes. As we pointed out in this program, in the Hebrew Bible, for example, you've got several names for God, and they try to put them all together. But they come from different cultures, and they had different cultures with different gods, and then they had cross-cultural relationships and borrowed from each other.
Well, it's often argued that there must be a God, because there must be a God or gods, because the concept appears in all or nearly all cultures.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are further explanations for that.
And there's so many
cultures tend to copy each other. They tend to even if select ideas. If they hear something, then they may adopt the same ideas, not verbatim, but change them to match their own circumstances.
You can see the modifications take place in the first part of Genesis, which is by one called the Elohim author. This is a God that does not walk in the garden. This is a different version of God. And so you have highly anthropomorphic views of God in the Bible, and then you have growing out of that. And then the anthropomorphism is taken over mostly by angels and other beings who come to earth and then act like human beings, more or less. And you have that among the Greeks, too.
Well, the thought kind of occurs to me, what other non-anthropomorphic gods do we know about?
Well, we got into that a little bit in this program, but not very much. It's called panentheism, which I never had much time to develop. But it develops a theory of evolution, and it takes quite seriously what we call physics and biology and evolution issues very seriously. And all my teachers in the theology school where I went were evolutionists. And so they tried to bring this into their theism, so that their view of theism is much closer to naturalism than it is to most theisms that I grew up with. But we'll get into those evolutions. And you've got some notion that theism developed out of cultural views of ethics and cultural guilt, and collective guilt.
I guess there are two aspects that one might associate with gods. That is what we would call natural events, things that happen, and then there's the and I think things that happen, storms, good weather,
crops,
and someone surviving an accident that kills others or injures others. And then there's the ethical aspect of it, how we interact with ourselves and with the other animals and the whole environment.
Good, yeah. So in some ways you could say all of religions. I think you could develop a theory of religion that covers Buddhism and Hinduism, versions of Christianity and Judaism, is that they're all dealing with the question of finitude and our vulnerability, and how do you explain it in the world. And then their vulnerability in terms you don't know everything, but you're trying to explain. Then your vulnerability on, you've got decisions to make, and that's moral decisions. And then you have emotional vulnerability. You have disaster, feelings of fear, anxiety, and also love and hope, and all those. So you got the physical, the intellectual, the emotional, all of that's to be explained and dealt with. And they were anthropomorphic.
Yeah, but it would seem that another almost essential aspect is the view that humans are set apart in a special position, something different from the rest of the world, because surely we accept that that the lions take down the zebras and other animals, and in fact we are omnivorous, and so we. I guess it's kind of generally assumed okay to destroy plants in order that we survive.
Eat those,
but then other animals, it's almost a necessary part of our development.
And even some animals, even if you eat animals, some you will and some you won't. Some are disgusting to you, and others because you're so emotionally involved.
So there, it's kind of a natural part of nature that there are prey species and those that prey on them, and that's regarded as rather natural.
Well, would you agree that no animal, though, is as violent as the human species in our history?
Certainly, humans have a propensity for violence.
Yeah. Which we have the tools that some animals are just stuck with, or born with, and we invented tools.
But there are things like, in a pride of lions, which are mostly females with one dominant male. And if the male falls from his position, then it's frequently the case that the new male will kill all of the young. So that seems to be a rather violent aspect as well.
And you have that in the Old Testament. A lot of whenever somebody in a clan does evil, they go in and wipe out the whole family, including the donkeys and other animals. I mean, those are passages in the Hebrew Bible. In fact, you have one prophet criticizing it. We got a call in. Good. Go ahead, caller. Give us a name and give us some ideas.
Hello, this is Larry. How are you?
Hi, Larry. Go.
Didn't know I was going to go straight on the shower.
Oh, we're got you right here.
Well, what's the topic today?
Well, our topic is evolution of monotheism. By the way, I personally enjoyed the book you've written.
Oh,
I'm trying to explain. Give us the title again. Atheism.
Well, what's it all about?
Yeah, and it's exceedingly well written. I want to.
Well, thank you very much. No, the evolution of God, of course, this particular one's been through a lot of changes. I did see part of the beginning of the show when we were talking about walking in the garden and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the God that we're worship, or that is worship today in Christianity, wouldn't do anything like that. Matter of fact, you wouldn't see him on earth giving any proof of any kind that he was alive or that he existed, because he only did that in the old days.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he do that now? That's the question I would have to ask Christians.
Well, it means partly if it does, you got everybody could make judgments about it. And one thing we wanted to point out in this program is even when you have a scripture, you've got lots of interpretations going on.
Oh, sure.
And
Go ahead. Changes all the way down through 2,000 years of reproduction and copying, most of it manually.
Mm-hmm.
When you have people who can put the word of God at the end of their pen, no telling what they might write when they're making a copy.
No, you got a point.
But Larry, you raise a point that it would seem in ancient writings that God and gods were physically present and interacting with human beings.
Well, according to the scriptures, yes.
But then, well, we have people who have called into this show and say God talks to them. Now, I have frequently asked the question and never gotten an answer. Well, what did the voice of God sound like?
Sure.
And it seems to me that they're thinking about something. They have some ideas, maybe different things, options to choose, and they choose one, and then come and tell us that God made that decision, that God spoke to them for them to make that decision. And
sure.
And so now if they're going around saying, well, God told me to do this and God told me to do that.
Sometimes you hear somebody say something like, if you're in the Baptist tradition, rather than say the Pentecostal, you often don't see God spoke to me or told me the Lord led me.
Right. Well, as Clarence Darrow said in the monkey trial, he says, well, maybe we should just start a new book of the Bible for the person whose God is talking to. We've got a new prophet.
Well, that's what the New Testament's about, don't you think?
So anyway, you take these stories that people tell us about God speaking to them, God guiding them, and so on, and imagine running that through several different iterations, and a few hundred years from now, it might sound like there was God here on earth at this moment.
Yeah.
Well, my question would be, how in the heck do they know that it's God talking to them? Does God say, hello, this is God? Remember that God is not the only supernatural being in their panoply of beings that is capable of putting thoughts in their mind.
Well,
Doesn't Satan have the ability to speak to them too?
Well, in the New Testament, you have this controversy developing among apparently what are called apostles, and some apparently are accusing each other of lying and of being synagogues of Satan. Now that's pretty strong language. I would rather say of my fellow human being, well, like me, sometimes it makes mistakes, rather than simply saying they're demon motivated.
And God always seems to say the things that the person is predisposed to believe himself.
Yeah.
If he's a homophobe, God is going to tell him that he's against homosexuals, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Larry, for calling in.
I just wanted to call in and talk to you for a second.
Hope
you're doing a great job on the show.
Thank you. I hope you keep writing.
Thank you. Take care.
It's a great book.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Well, another point that we point out is that I once talked to a man once, and he said God could do whatever he wants. We were talking, and I said, well, now, let's talk about this. You're making the assumption that might makes right, that power is what is the definition of God, and that's it. But I said, most people, when they think of God, they have more than just raw power. And so they have to have a God with moral standards, otherwise they won't use the word. And so the question is, how do these moral standards develop? And you have various versions of God, and sometimes the moral standards seem to differ from God to God. And in fact, you have the New Testament writers trying to say some of the things in the Hebrew text simply are for slavery. I mean, Paul is pretty blunt about it. And he says the revelation was given through angels, not directly.
Oh.
And that means it's secondary to what and whereas he got straight, he went to the third heaven himself, not through some angel. So what we're saying here, I think you would agree with me, is that you have a great diversity of views, and this is just like evolution, chance variation. And then not all the variations get selected. Some get pushed aside, and then some get selected. And that's what the canon came to be, is a selection process. But before the Christians had the canon, the Jews had a canon, which means they had to weed out a lot. There's a lot of material between the New and the Old Testament that had a big impact on Hebrew thinking, but it never got classified as Scripture, but it got treated like Scripture, like the first, second, third, fourth Enoch, and the Assumption of Moses, and on, all kinds of material. And for example, the book of Job, not Job, but Jude in the New Testament, refers apparently to the Assumption of Moses. About, I'd mentioned on this program of Michael, the archangel, had a big argument with Satan about who's going to get the body of Moses. Now, how they knew about that is but your point was a little bit, they're thinking and visioning. Once they start a presupposition, then they got to work through it to make it fit with a certain amount of consistency. And then they start weeding out. Now, thinking in that sense is an evolutionary process. You weed out some things and you select. That's the evolution process. One of the big problems, of course, is the problem of suffering and evil in the world. If you've got a God who's all-powerful and knows everything, then you got to say, well, if he knows so much and is so good and good in all those three, good and powerful, why is there so much evil in the world?
But that kind of goes back to my remark about the interaction between animals, prey, and predators, and so on. That if the natural world, I mean, if the God is a God of the natural world, creating food and feeders and everything to provide some kind of a balance. Kind of as an aside, it reminds me of some of these pastoral scenes in heaven of the lions laying down with the lambs. And I kept wondering, now what do the lions eat, though? But anyway, if that same natural world extends to humans as well, then the so-called evils that befall us are just a natural part of the natural world.
Okay, the word evil has two meanings, at least, in the history of the word. It's called natural evil, and that doesn't mean it's motivated by any bad motives. It's just harm. And then there's moral evil, and that's the kind of thing you and I can do, and people like me and like you, in other words, are human beings. We don't usually think of a cow as committing moral evil. Now, we don't think of a tornado as moral evil because we don't have control. Now, if we think there is a God with control of tornadoes that destroy innocent people, then that raises the question of what's called theodicy. And some Christians, and before that, some Jews in the interbiblical period, not in the very ancient period, in my opinion, but in the biblical period, they developed the notion, first of called the adversary, and then it got translated into the devil. And it's kind of a henchman that God turns all the dirty work over to the devil, and then the devil apparently has got more than he can handle, and so you got a whole bunch of messengers called demons. And that's how they partly try to explain so much destruction and harm and that sort of thing in the natural world and in the human world. Because they're already into this, see, the personification view. You were saying?
Well, but, so that gets back to the idea that I raised earlier, is that are humans part of the natural world? If they're part of the natural world, then natural things are going to befall them. Well, Joe, I see that we have another call.
Good.
So, caller, thank you for calling. Would you please give us your name or nickname, please?
It's Charles from Central Illinois.
Oh, hello, Charles.
I recognize the sneeze.
Last week, you guys, the upstream wasn't on, so I didn't know you had a show.
Okay, go.
Okay. Last week. Hello?
I at our rationalist meeting, last time
Community TV was doing an update on the upstream.
Yeah, there was
guys.
there was a failure to air the program over the cable, but we did get a DVD made available to us.
Okay. Well, thank you for calling in.
Yeah, this is Charles, Central Illinois. The evolution of monotheism. Well, the very first commandment he gives is, I am thy Lord and God. You shall have no other gods before me.
Go ahead.
Apparently, he's acknowledging that there are other supernatural beings out there.
Yes. I think you're right. I think that developed in the context of polytheism. And that became what's called henotheism. Each nation has its own God, and Israel had the God of Israel. And that was an early stage before monotheism. And these other nations and tribes, they had their gods.
Yes, and you were mentioning something about the tornadoes, and if you have an awesome God and so forth who's just and loving. Somewhere, as I recall, there's a statement that says, I am the author of all that is good and evil.
Good and evil. Yeah, that's an early view. That's when some of the early Hebrews were emphasizing omnipotence or all power. And Calvin is the one in Christianity who picks up on that and develops his own version of raw omnipotence. In fact, he says, one Calvinist says that God causes evil, but it's not evil of him to do so.
Which
that's Gordon Clark, who was the teacher of Billy Graham.
Yes, I believe I've heard that. Now, how can you cause something that is evil without having evil intent?
Well,
the thing that bothers me with that.
Well,
you know it's wrong to do it, but you do it anyway.
Well, because that's the view that if you're God, you apparently you're not bound by moral standards that human beings are.
Which brings up, if it is, I believe it's pronounced if it is dilemma. Is it good because God says so? Or does God says so, therefore it is good?
Yeah, that's Plato brought that up because there were so many gods with different views, and so he developed the notion of the eternal forms or standards, and if there's a God, he's got to live up to the standards. Otherwise, you won't qualify as God.
Oh, but I must go back to my view of the natural world. That is it evil for the lion to kill the lamb?
It's the lamb's point of view. What do you think?
I mean, so you could say, well, God caused this evil to befall the lamb, but on the other hand, it's part of the balance and consistency of the natural world.
A rapist rapes your relative. That's part of the natural world, right?
It's an action within the natural world, yes.
Okay. Now, do you make moral judgments?
I do.
Yeah. Is that part of the natural world?
Rape is wrong.
Is that part of the natural world?
For me to make that judgment?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So in nature, morality for human beings evolves and emerges. So that in the natural world, before we develop morals, lions could eat your children. Now we have a different viewpoint.
250,000 years ago, I think the predecessors to us would have disagreed whether or not it was natural or not, or moral.
I think you're right, because the concept of nature took a long time to develop.
Well. Still, I would say, in order to maintain this balance, certain evil things must happen. So, whether you say God willed this particular thing to happen, or whether you say in the overall balance of things, these happen. So God, who created this balance, in a sense, created this evil, but doesn't have the power to do anything about it without destroying the rest of the balance of nature.
Yeah, and some of the prophets seem to realize that, and that's why they visioned a new order, because this particular order didn't give them as good a deal as they thought they ought to have, and they envisioned a better world. And you find this in almost all religions. As a matter of fact, you find it among atheists, trying to envision a better world. Now,
a more perfect union is the way the founders of the United States stated it when they went from the Confederation of States to the Republic of the United States.
And that's what most families do, is we're all here with all our interests, and now we're trying to work so most of us can get a lot of our interests, but so we can respect others. And that's how that's pretty much how ethics begin. And I think it begins among animals, and if they don't develop something like that, they don't survive very long.
Oh, well, it depends upon the species. Tigers are solitary creatures, but humans and chimpanzees, and dolphins and meerkats and so forth are social species.
That's a good point.
Okay? And as social species, we've seen meerkats share food. We've seen chimpanzees and several different monkeys do the same thing. We've seen the same thing in packs of dogs.
Let me ask you one thing. Among tigers, how do they take care of their young who can't fend for themselves?
The mother creates a den. Okay?
Good.
That's where she bears her young. Nurses from her.
Now, what if the male what if a male comes in and decides to disrupt things? What happens?
They've been known to kill other tigers that aren't their cubs to kill them so that she'll go into heat and bear his young. Okay? That's also been noted sometimes in lion pride.
Yeah.
That when a new dominant male suddenly replaces the previous dominant male, they've been known to kill lion cubs of a previous dominant male.
And I think you can find that maybe among baboons, don't you?
I don't know. I don't have that information.
Yeah, I think you can, yeah. So now, you find some of this somewhat in the Hebrew Bible, among tribalism. I mean, you have a lot of collective murder. And then you have Ezekiel says, no longer is this going, I mean, he's got another revelation. And he says, no longer.
He's probably because he was looking around and seeing lots of other people wandering around that had larger numbers of people than they had, and realized that if we kept this up, they're going to just, outbeat us and kill us all.
Yeah.
So we got to stop this.
Yeah, exactly. And you find examples of this evolving in the Hebrew Bible, and which is the point.
The tribe of Benjamin, wasn't they the ones that had to go out and steal a bunch of other tribes' women because all of theirs were dead or enslaved or something?
Well, the tribes had to get together before they killed each other off. All of them were doing this, raiding each other's and getting each other's women, and they'd kill off the men so they could keep the women and get them pregnant. And of course, some of the prophets saw that this was a self-destructive process. And so they had new revelations. See, I'm contending a lot of what's called revelation in the Bible is just problem solving. They're trying to say, well, this is a better way. I've got a revelation now.
Yeah, so do I, especially if they get mythologize a whole lot of it. Miraculous happenings and so forth. And so that they would have the big mojo on their side and impose what they needed to be done.
Well, I want to thank you for calling us in. We've got some more things we prepared for. I hope you don't mind if we say so long. And thank you for calling in from Illinois.
Okay.
Thank you, Charles. Bye.
Thanks, Charles. So I wanted to point out something. In 2 Samuel, here's a good example of modification. You have Yahweh, God. It's called the Lord, this translation, one of the translations. The Lord incited David to take a census of the people. And Joab, his general, said, no, don't do this. Now, the thought is when you start taking a census of people, people get nervous because they know that that's step one toward taxation. And so Joab says, don't do it. But David went ahead and did it anyhow, against the Lord's advice. Taking the Lord's advice, because it was the Lord who incited him to do it. And then after he did it, he said he's going to give David some options of punishment. And lo and behold, after it's all worked out, thousands are wiped out as punishment for David's sin. Now that's in 2 Samuel chapter 24. The same story is rewritten in 1 Chronicles chapter 21. And it says, not Yahweh or the Lord incited David to take the census of the people, but Satan. Now that's a big difference, it seems to me. Now why? Because I think the writer of Chronicles realized to have Yahweh God inciting David to do a sinful, wicked thing like this, and then punishing thousands of people, was just blatantly immoral. And so we shifted it over. The bad guy is Satan, and he serves a big function then in the latter part of the Bible and the New Testament.
Joe, I think we're a little beyond the midpoint of our program. We want to remind our viewers that this program comes to you by the Rationalists of East Tennessee and the Atheist Society of Knoxville. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets 4 times a month on the first and third Sundays. We gather in the cafeteria annex at Pellissippi Community College. And we have programs, maybe an invited speaker on a topic. Sometimes it'll be like DVDs or something like that. Sometimes it's just throw out topics for discussion. But typical of these presentations is that there's always lots of questions, and in fact, the program starts at 10:30. Come a little early for
10:30.
For refreshments,
little punch and cookies and stuff.
And goes till 12:30. Now, suppose if that were a church service, people would be kind of antsy, but we almost have to kick people out
because they hang around,
because of the enthusiasm that's
it does have a lot of enthusiasm. That's true.
Okay, and then on the second Sunday, we have book club. Gather at Books A Million on Kingston Pike, and the topic, the book for the month, is posted ahead of time. People are encouraged to get a copy and read it and participate in the conversation, but you don't have to read the book in order to come. And then on the fourth Sunday, there is a gathering in someone's home for called Reflections.
That's good.
Have a potluck lunch, and then people settle down, and usually it's difficult for people to get a word in edgewise, but there's a procedure to make sure that everyone
they had a pretty
gets
good
a
system
chance
to make it so that everybody takes turns and nobody interrupts.
Well, Sam, could you show our promotional videos, and we'll talk about ASK when we get back.
If you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
Knoxville. Joe, would you like to...
Well, Larry, who just called in, is very good in sponsoring that. And I think he's also now president of the RET also, and they interact with each other. So that's good. It's The whole point is to have people to have options. And, I talked to a Muslim recently. It's apostasy. If you're a Muslim and if you decide you want to be a Christian, in the Muslim religion, you can be murdered. That's apostasy.
Yeah.
Now, that comes out of the ancient tradition because that's considered forsaking the family. And I hope we never go back to that.
Okay, but the Atheist Society of Knoxville is principally for camaraderie, get around and individual discussions. And ASK meets on Tuesdays at 5:30. Started 11 minutes ago down at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria. And look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion on the table. But you walk in and there's this, at least last time I was there, a long table, and the biggest group there is ASK. So
that's good. Yeah.
Sit down, get involved in a conversation, and
have some good fellowship.
and you move up and down the table, you can get lots of different views.
We used to say in college, no ship like fellowship. That's how corny we were.
Okay, so...
okay, let's get back to our topic then. Huh? Have you got something else before we get back? Another announcement or anything? Picnic
Thursday, but we have a phone call first.
Thursday at 4 p.m.
Hello, caller. Would you give us your name or nickname, please?
JD.
JD.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us what's on your mind, JD.
Well, I'll tell you what's on my mind.
Good.
I've seen y'all before, and I don't care if you're atheist, it's fine with me.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm a Christian, and you're not, and I don't think Christianity is attacking you. But you think it is, or seem to think it is. But I'm going to ask you one question. You're the Atheist Association of Knoxville. Did you endorse a candidate for mayor? Did you endorse a city councilman? Did you endorse a county commissioner? Are you registered to vote? What do you do to make Knoxville a better place?
No, yes.
We don't try to get into telling you how to vote, okay?
You're not telling me how to live my life.
You don't need politicians to tell you what your religion should be. I think you would agree, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no, I don't need that. But what you say is Christianity is attacking you. There's some politicians who make laws, Christians don't make them.
Would you agree if an atheist murders you, it's evil?
I'd agree if anybody murdered me, it's evil.
Okay, we're on the same page there, good brother.
You don't know the difference. Murder is against the law. So stealing, but see, on one hand, if you're a ghost employee over to city county building, steal from the taxpayers, you get slapped on the hand. You break in somebody's house, they'll kill you. Try to take their stuff. See, so it just depends on whether you have influence or don't have, and who you are and what you are in this old town.
I got you.
Been that way ever since I was a kid. And, it's kind of comical, and you fellas are kind of comical. I know you got association, and I know you're very intelligent. You're a lot smarter than I am.
But we can all be comical. Go ahead.
But, I get kind of tickled at you.
Go ahead.
To attack Christianity because they're not attacking you.
Let me tell you this.
This is the country of free will. You can do what you want to as long as it's within the law.
Let me see what you think. Don't think of this as an attack. We're doing what Christians and Jews and others do. We're giving an explanation from our point of view, you see. Now, let me ask you this. You disagree.
Are you trying to take people that are Christians and convert them to atheists?
Let me ask you this. Do you disagree with me? That was a good question. Do you disagree with me on things I say?
No, it's not so much I disagree with you. You're a smart man. You know that.
No. What kind of...
Read it more than I have.
But look,
I agree with that. You seem to be smarter about the Bible than I am and know more about it than I do.
Well, what I'm saying is, just because you might disagree with me, that doesn't mean that's an attack. You see what I'm getting at? Baptists disagree with Catholics, and Methodists disagree with Churches of Christ, but that doesn't mean they have to attack each other. You see my point?
Each other. But you seem to think, and I watched your little clip there about, you know, if anybody's attacking a human being's body like abortion and gay rights or anything like that, it's politicians. It's not. I mean, I know churches take stands on things like that, but and they may march with a sign or something, or they may put up a sign.
Good point. Good point.
Something like that, you know, they have a right to do that.
Right.
Same way as people who want an abortion have a right to just go get one. You know, they got a right to do that, whether it's right, wrong, evil, or not. They've got a right.
Okay.
The Roe versus Wade to do that.
Okay.
If you want to be gay, you can be gay.
Okay.
You know, and you can do whatever you want to in this country pretty much.
I like that. I like that.
Well, you know, I disagree with you that that in your view that you can do pretty much what you want. I mean, if for those people who were gay, who were attacked, beaten, killed, and all of this stuff, that, you know, they would say, oh well, these people are attacking us, and they would certainly be right. We as a group experience the same kind of problems. If we come out, you might say, I believe in God and Jesus is my Savior and all of this stuff, and you probably won't be fired from your job. But on the other hand, there are many who don't believe that, and if they come out with their expressing their beliefs, they get fired. Their parents won't talk to them.
Now, wait just a minute. You're trying to tell me that if I hire you, and you can do the job, and you're doing a good job, and you're making me money, and we have a disagreement over religion, that I'm going to fire you?
No, I didn't say you're going to.
Well, wait a minute. No, he's got a good point. A man like you would not, and that's what I respect about you, you see. But
I'm hiring you to do a job. I'm not hiring you.
Well, see, you and I are in agreement on this.
I mean, I don't know of anybody who fires people because they're not Christian.
Well, there are some people who teach school, for example, who cannot come out, and that's understandable, you understand.
You know, a lot of people don't come out because they're gay, and you talk about gays being beaten, so were the African Americans. So were the Native Americans. This was their country before we stole it from them.
Okay, well, you're in agreement with us then, what we're saying. And I think you would...
All those are supposed to be good, ethical, moral people that took these savages and took their land away from them, killed them, and everything.
And I think I would agree with you on that.
No, and then the same thing with the black man. And
That makes sense.
And we've got the immigrants who we treat as slaves, but we make them economic arms, you know. And they've learned to work hard, and they've learned to make money, and they're raising kids, and those kids are going to get to be voting age, and they're going to control things.
Okay, now, would you agree with me? I mean, I don't know if you have a trouble agreeing with me on something. Let's see. Or I would agree with you that to attack a viewpoint is not the same as to attack a person.
I know, but I just don't understand your...
That was a clear question, and if it's...
No, I agree with you. You take my viewpoint.
Okay. By the way, what profession are you in? Or were you?
Well, it didn't make any difference.
Well, I wanted to say, you mentioned my being intelligent. Don't hire me as a carpenter or a lot of other things. What I'm trying to say, intelligence is a lot of many things in different areas. So
well, you're well read and you're well versed, and I'd say you're educated. I'd say you have a college degree and that sort of thing. And y'all seem to get on here and like talk about philosophy and that sort of thing, and I know nothing much about it. I just know that if you go to work on Friday's payday, I know what time to show up, what time.
Well, that's my dad was in the restaurant business for many years, and I worked for him, and he taught me how to be polite and kind, you know, because that's part of having a good business, and it's also how to get along with people.
Yeah, it's great.
And I think, and I guess your point is, too, whether we agree on all religions, we can get along morally with each other.
Oh, yeah, I don't see any trouble getting along unless you attack me.
Well, physically.
I'm not talking about physically. I'm just talking about unless you come out and say, well, the thing for you to do is convert from Christianity to atheism. I'm not trying to convert you.
Well, is that attacking you or attacking an idea that you hold?
I know, but I just don't know what y'all do that makes Knoxville or anybody else a better place.
Okay, well, I agree with you. As a matter of fact, let me ask you this. I think we're in the... It's kind of sad when you have a caller you disagree with everything. You agree with it.
The only thing I see is like losing their freedoms. And not because Christianity. Christianity had nothing to do with them making that ordinance in Knoxville. You couldn't park your car in your front yard.
Yeah, I got you.
You got a piece of property, it's not bound by any, if it's not bound by any subdivision rules or anything. It's non-restricted.
Gotcha.
You park your car in the front yard. They'll come by and tell you when to mow your grass. The thing they're going to do is come by and tell us what color to paint our houses. They've got totally out of control. It's not big.
I see what you're pointing. Yeah.
Council and county commission, and these are the most important things that we have. And they're not. You can call it liberal or conservative. You can call it whatever you want to, but when it comes to you've got the freedom to be an atheist. I've got the freedom to be a Christian. That's a great thing.
Well, it is great. In fact, we often talk about Roger Williams in this country, who was a great Christian. And he had an enormous influence on a lot of atheists because he developed in this country the principle of church-state separation, by which he meant you don't need politics to tell people what their religion is going to be, including...
No, I don't think we do have that. You may disagree with me, but I don't think we do because, there's certain people that are in office that hold one position, and certain people hold another position, and certain people that want to get elected are going to have to appeal to a lot of people.
Okay. Well, one of thank you.
That line to walk.
Well, one of the things...
It's kind of comical as you watch them when they go to run for these offices and then they're walking this line and trying to get along with everybody.
Walking the crooked line, huh?
I'm going to let y'all go.
Well, J.D., thank you very much for calling. Please call us back another day.
Georgia.
Bye.
No, I just, I want to know when you do something positive for this city and this community and bring forth something of real importance.
Okay. Thank you, J.D.
I appreciate it.
Well, Joe, you wanted to get into polytheism, and I would remark that there are two aspects of polytheism. Like among the Romans or among the Greeks, there were many gods that influenced in their view, different parts of the world. But then among tribal groups, there were a chief god associated with different tribes. Now, it seems to me this is a different view of the world, and both being called polytheism, unless you have another name for it.
I think I used the word henotheism, but maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Okay. Henotheism for the multiple tribal.
This tribe has a god, and this one has, or this nation has a god, and this one. And then the Roman Empire wanted to set up a kind of a Roman view of what religion was, and that's why the Hebrews were in conflict with the Roman government somewhat, and they tried to make deals.
Well, excuse me for...
Go ahead.
Poly means, to me, many, and you might draw different distinctions about these two situations, but we were talking about evolution of monotheism, so would you follow that line of reasoning for us?
The monotheism, it just means one God. And then later, when Christianity came along, that's a whole other ball game. You had Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And then you had great diversity among Christians. For example, you had the Monophysites saying that Jesus had only one nature, whereas you had some saying he had two natures. Have we got another caller? So and then you had and then you had tritheism, which sounds like three gods again. Got another caller. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Faithless Forrest. I've been watching the show, and I know there's only a few minutes left. Previous caller asked, I think, kind of what we did to try and, for the benefit of the community. And, on Thursday, where we have our picnic, we are going to do a blood drive, and at least I'll be showing up to donate blood. And in the past, others have as well.
When is this?
On Thursday, which is the National Day of Reason.
And that's 4 p.m., right?
I'm going at 3 p.m. To donate so that I hopefully can be at the picnic at 4.
So there are two activities. There's the picnic that starts at 4 in Tyson Park, first pavilion as you go in. But then there's the other meeting earlier over at Medic to donate blood.
Oh, okay.
Yep. I'm practicing for my test, so to speak, or I'm studying hard.
I think the state troopers are collecting some donations for children, so a lot of good things going on.
All righty.
And
Joe, I have a theology sort of question, maybe an observation, really. You mentioned the Samuel 24, verse 1 versus Chronicles 21, verse 1. And when I read the Bible, I just assumed that there was a second census, and I remember thinking to myself, boy, is David stupid. Remember how bad it turned out the first time. And
no, I think it's just you have a what's called a redactor who didn't like the theology of the first story, so he rewrote the story and changed the theology, and it's right there in the Bible.
Yeah, all right, but I can't help but think that some people have got to say, oh, no, there were two censuses. And, all right. Well, I'll let you guys finish up. Thanks for taking my call.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Bye, all.
Bye-bye.
Okay, speed evolution. 30 seconds. Tell us how monotheism evolved.
Well, it's still evolving, and we can get that later on.
We got to the point. It collapsed down to 1, and then expanded again to 3.
But before it got to be, while it was getting 1, they generated a lot of angels and archangels.
Not to mention a saint for this and a saint for that, just like they had the gods for this and gods for that. It's hard for an outsider to think of these.
It's called delegation.
These things is monotheism. But anyway, it's time for us to wrap up our show.
And want our callers to let them know how much we appreciate their calling in. It was a very useful time today to have these callers. They're good.
And so our show appears the same time every week, except May 26th, I think. We're going to be.
And I'm sorry we didn't get into the book of Revelation today.
but join us either on cable TV or we're streaming Free Thought to the world. You can view us on ctvknox.org. Go in there and click on Free Thought Forum, and we'll be talking to you.
Thank you.